Hello, everyone. Today we are again discussing something interesting. Hopefully, let's see how the conversation goes. We are talking about possible opportunities or a role around product ownership. I don't know, is it a product owner, product manager, or business analyst? I think we will explore as we go along. And we have a professional with us, and she is willing to talk about her experience and bring some interesting question to us, and probably we will make some use of it. So give us a little background, and then we get started with the conversation.
Thank you, Saket. So I have been working in the as a professional of IT and area for around a couple of years now. And during this journey, I have lived in India. Now I am outside of country. So during this journey, I got to work with global clientele, and especially when I'm in outside of the country, I got to work with some of the major brands. I got to partner with them, and I worked in their e-commerce journeys, sometimes initially as a product specialist. So there I got to learn how e-commerce works, what are the difference, and how you collaborate and bring things to the page. And then I had some different aspirations. I moved out my initial organization. I moved out another company where I worked as a project manager. So I got to learn the aspects of how a project manager works. Sometimes we people tease, oh, project manager, they are so, like blah, blah, blah. And then I got to know, like, there, when you become a project manager, there are different aspects. You have to see a picture from the different aspects. So I got to learn about that. And somewhere now, when I have project managers, I sympathize with them, why if they're doing something, what was a pain problem, they also have an cost, budgets, timelines, and all those things. But I had different aspirations because I want to be oriented more towards the product owner, because right from the beginning I had some aspirations to understand why something is being done. And when I was in the area of developer, I could not relate to it unless and until someone really explain me why it needed, because I can create something but it's not useful. So that's the reason I am in this path followed, and I am a product owner with a well recognized player at this point of time. And I am looking forward for different areas of interest and becoming myself more stable, suitable, and more I would say mature in this role. So that's
Perfect.
the reason I am doing all those things. Yeah.
So what I understand is that you have a product analyst background. You understand the overall delivery aspects as well, because you have been through project management profile as well. And in the recent time, you are exploring product ownership, primarily working as a service organization. And now you want to aspire to get into a more focused product ownership role where there is a more freedom and more creativity. Yeah, so that's what I'm picking up.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Perfect. So what are the questions? What are the things you want to explore? Yeah, let's get started.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I have some questions which, when I think about from the perspective of product owner, there are some things which I feel, if you know that, it will be really great. So somewhere, as I will be deep diving into it, and somewhere I feel when you work, so I suppose just a question, hypothetical question I have, assume there is a new feature request, and during user story splitting and estimating, you feel team is having some problems, they are not able to estimating it properly or something. So as a PO, how you help them so that user story splitting is done correctly? So how you will take that initiative so that splitting is proper and team gets that advantage, so that they can estimate it properly, rather than going in the loopholes of we don't understand this and this. So how to have that strong base created from the beginning?
So see, the product ownership, product management has multiple dimensions. It has a strategic dimension, it has a collaborative dimension, stakeholder engagement dimension, validation of the past features dimension, and it also has an execution dimension. So right now we are focusing on getting things done aspect. Yeah. So that's, I wanted to bring a common agreement. So assuming I have taken care of the exploration, identification, collaboration already, now I have something in my hand and I'm working with the development team, and development team is unable to figure out how can they incrementally deliver it. Because why are we splitting it? Because we want to do an incremental delivery. Yeah, else we could just do it as a one big item. But if we do it as a one big item, I get a delayed feedbacks and all those things. So I want to make them incrementally doing it. And that's the situation. And that's the reason I am there. Now, they might be facing a challenge because they might see that this is the thing which we need to do, design together, analyze together, develop together, and we can't slice it. Yeah, that's the problem they might be facing. So we need to collaborate and understand their concern, as well as explain how you can probably create a multiple values out of a small requirement. Yeah. So say each acceptance criteria is a possibility of value. So you may talk about that, okay, we have a 5 acceptance criteria. Can we do it one by one? Can we do it two by two first and later, remaining later? Or you may focus on, oh, we have a big complex requirement. Can we divide the requirement based on? So there are various stories, splitting technique, talking about the data boundary based splitting, splitting based on the operation, like adding this time, deleting next time, editing third time. There could be a possibility of thinking of some of the functional and non-functional requirement probably as a separate user stories. That should be avoided, but in some cases it might be the case. If nothing works, if you can't think logic, like from a business perspective, splitting is not possible, then the complex stories can be also splitted as a technological exploration and development. So rather than clubbing everything, if they want to do some homework, say some API building, something in advance before the whole thing get developed, then there is a possibility that they don't take a user story. Yeah, they do some kind of an exploration work before they can start doing the user story. And that's a possible thing which can happen in the initial stages of your development, because there could be a need where the basic platform is not there on which the incremental value delivery can happen. So my advice would be that yes, as an interview, you might know these techniques like splitting based on data boundaries, splitting based on operations, splitting based on workflow steps. Workflow workflow could be that I add something, I review later on, and I approve later on. So can I divide and split into a user stories? Different workflow stages can become a different user story. You can think of splitting based on acceptance criteria. Splitting based on data boundaries means that you have 20 fields. You may want to make a one user story with basic fields, say 5 fields, and then you may have other story which will add the rest of the fields to it. So it depends. Say you have a profile, so you may split the profile as a basic profile, upload photographs to profile, all those things depending upon what you see there. And in case of technology things, then you may want to divide it as an exploration spikes and the whole development thing. So as an approach, empathy, understand each other's perspective, show the reason of why we are splitting the user story, because we want to do incremental value delivery, and then probable some of these things may work out in collaboration with development team.
Fantastic. So it really, it absolutely makes sense when I connect with the scenarios we deal in the real-time situations. This is how we do it, but sometimes we are not able to, relate to it, put into a proper framing statement. So thank you, Saket, for helping me over here. So I would say, like, there is, as we know, we deal with the multiple requests at a time, and as a PO we will be having many stakeholders who would be sometimes reaching out to me out of the blue. Some requests, they say this is this particular time is coming up and we need particular feature or something like that, and somehow they know your team also well, and they say, I know your team can do this, it's just a little bit of this thing over there. So maybe at that point, I'm assuming I am new in this area. I'm just new to it because my stakeholder knows better than me, my team, and they know their proficiency. So when I talk now, when I have heard all this, I go back to my team. My team does say, like, we can do this, it's okay. But this doesn't falls under our bucket. So there is another team who owns this. So whenever something like this happens, they should be the first one to do it. So as a PO, I duly understand there is just stakeholders who C-level executive coming to me. But when I do understand over here, I see an area which is not under my bucket. So as a PO, without, offensing the other one, but ensuring this is also happening with the right people involved in, how should I plan, like how a PO can take next right steps so that, everything is done without the harm, because I don't know what other teams might be thinking about it, what sort of visibility they will have it. So I really do not want to touch their area without their knowledge. So Perfect. How should I take the next step forward?
So in this case, like if I look into an interview space, so it might be a question related to handling multiple priorities and also handling your product boundaries. Yeah, so you may have a a large product which may have multiple teams or areas. So, and there could be, from a stakeholder, those area may not be very clearly identified, but that's how the conflict arises. Yeah? So that's a possible thing. Yeah. So the overall thing is facilitation and working with people to come up to an agreeable solution. So that's a skill which we are getting explored. Now, how do we do that, provided this kind of a scenario comes? So one thing is that I need to create a facilitative environment where these things can be visualized and discussed. So first is I need to keep my team priorities and my team current backlog items pretty much visible and handy. So whoever wants to see it, whoever wants to understand what is happening, they can do it. So they can empathize what is happening and what is not happening. So even if the work is small, what is the current priority? So you should have a mechanism to quickly extract the current priorities and facilitate those conversations. That's the one thing. Second thing, in a backlog prioritization process or a backlog refinement process, we need to identify the right stakeholders who participate in that, and that participation and conversation may be facilitated by using some kind of a way of doing prioritization, some kind of a model where we can classify the work items into different categories, and we understand maybe a voting coming from the stakeholders. Incidentally, in the theories, you learn a lot about how to do a user story estimation, but we don't spend that much time talking about how do we do a prioritization. And we may think, oh, PO does the prioritization, but actually that's not the case. In many situations, it's a collaborative effort again. And in some cases, it's more collaborative effort than estimating the user stories. So we need to have some mechanism to collect those inputs so that we have a agreeable priorities. Now, so that's the second thing I need to put into this place. Now, third thing is if I get a request, yeah. So I also make it clear to the stakeholders that it might not be possible to answer them till the time it goes through a backlog refinement review process. And you may have more ad hoc backlog refinement also whenever needed. It's not necessarily a particular fixed meeting. Yeah, in general, you can do a little bit fast backlog refinement processes as well. So those backlog refinement processes, if such kind of a request comes in, there are right set of stakeholders and they explore that particular idea, and that helps us in knowing what can be done and what cannot be done. So that's the third thing you may want to focus on. The fourth thing you may want to focus on is collaborating with other product owners. So there are product areas, product things. So you should have easy and flexible process to talk to other product people so that you collaborate together in order to achieve the organization objective. So whenever the boundaries and such kind of things are coming, we freely talk to the product owners, we freely talk to the respective scrum masters and stakeholders to find out how do we move forward. That's the possible thing you can do. And the final thing you can do as a fifth thing, you also work on enhancing your knowledge about the other areas. So because then you can quickly figure it out. Sometimes you may not be able to conclude is it good or bad, but you can ask some more question when the stakeholders are giving you some requests, when you know more about the product and the solution space. So now if the situation has already happened, now that's five, six things you will do in order to move forward. If the situation has already happened, then you will approach the next product owner and understand their perspective, and based on various alternatives, you compile the information and you talk to the stakeholder what can be done and what cannot be done.
Awesome. Thank you. Because these steps, I believe they will definitely help the problem like this to be resolved, having your own things prioritized, visible, then not directly giving anything, talking to the team at the right time, having their inputs, and, reaching out to the respective people. And yes, that is a very great thing. Like, if a product is separated across the team, I'm sure nobody can have the entire knowledge about everything, but having an overview of the things can be helpful. Sometimes you can say, I know about this, but I'm not sure, is it really possible? This is what I think, but let's talk to the people who are actually owning this, and we take the next step forward in the right.
Yeah.
Cool. This really makes sense. Thank you very much, Saket. So Saket, right now we were working on the topic of the prioritization. So I have a similar question around this. So right now, when in this post-COVID area, we all know there has been a lot of hits on the personal also, people management also, and lots of things have happened, right? So in that case, how do you prioritize the backlog, and assuming your team has a very limited capacity to work on things, and you have a list of either of bugs or the new feature enhancements, but everyone say, this is important, we want it. So how do you prioritize, knowing that there is a limited capacity, and what should be the right steps to do, so that I'm sure it's not easy to, you cannot make everyone happy, but at least what you are doing, that is agreeable or something like that.
Yeah. So the simplest answer people will give, prioritize based on value. But the biggest possible is, how do you quantify value, and how do you know what is value? Yeah. So there could be multi dimensions of value. There could be a profit value. There could be a risk value. There could be a technological value. There could be people happiness value. There could be market opportunity value. So there could be multiple things, which can create this whole confusion. So the idea here is, nobody knows what is value perfectly. Nobody will be able to pick it. The only best thing I can do as a product person is facilitate conversation around value. So as a group, we have an agreement on value. Yeah. And this is a kind of a backlog prioritization process. Not necessarily you may have two types of prioritization meetings or refinement meetings also, where one type of meeting is more stakeholder oriented and another type of meeting might be development oriented. And depending upon complexity, you may want to merge these two meetings as well. So the identity, any development approach, the basic or the issue which as a delivery person we face is, who are the stakeholders, how open they are, how well they collaborate with each other, and how can I get a proper input from them. So if I have right stakeholders identified, if I have a mechanism to have an open discussion with them, then I can create a structure around where prioritization can come. The idea here is, this is a simple problem of managing demand and capacity. So I have an X capacity and I have many demand, and I need to find out, how do I make maximum use of my capacity? And in order to do that, I need to find out collaboratively those things which will give the maximum value. And no one probably has the answer. There could be opinions. Someone believes this is valued and someone else will believe something else value. So there are opinions. We can only make people talk together, and those opinion comes in front of each other, and we have some mechanism of making decisions. So it's all about having some probable thing. Could be that you may have a kind of a simple Excel sheet where you talk about, out of these things, which one you feel is the maximum value, which one you feel is the maximum value, kind of a planning poker, and people may vote differently, and you may have some conversation based on that. That's the one possibility. The another possibility is that you can split the value in a different way. What is the business value? What is the risk value? And you may ask that, okay, which one is mitigating risk? Which one is possibly giving more business value? That could be the another mechanism of it. Sometimes you also want to focus on the quantum of work involved there in order to find out which one can be done faster. Because even if something is valued more, but it will take 6 months to do it, then even with the high value, I don't do anything. Yeah. So I may want to see the agreement on the value, which may have a multiple dimensions. And as a team, we can find out what are those dimensions. And then we can focus on the amount of time it takes to get things done by way of some way of sizing those particular product backlog items. And collaboratively, the decision has to be made. And if we create that process more frequent and people know when the next meeting is going to happen, then it is less risky. So rather than making these priorities for a longer duration and making people uncomfortable that if I don't get it today, then I will not get it for next 6 months. If you have a little predictable process that this discussion is happening every 2 weeks or every 1 month, depending upon what is true for them, then people can say that, okay, this is not a final priority. Every 2 weeks, we reprioritize things based on the situation at hand. So don't think that if something is going prioritized low today, it will remain low all the time, because sometimes that creates a lot of mess. We are only focusing on that we are prioritizing things for upcoming 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever the duration is important. And then we relook, we collect the data and continue working on this. So that kind of a working agreement can help us in coordinating and facilitating prioritization process.
Great. So in short, when we say, so it's more about, again, the facilitation, communication, clarity, and transparency. Along with that, whatever we look into it at that point of time, we should, like visualizing, you can say 3 to 4 sprints or something like that. what is the risk of delay, business value. As you told, the values could be a different aspect. So your stakeholders value better. So keeping those in mind, your team's capacity, like any technical issues or something like that, if we keep already working on this, we will never be in a situation like this. It's just like, rather than working it at one go, it make it a habit of having things done always.
Yeah. And if you want to use some terms, especially in the interview space, you can say we do it based on cost of delay. So we have a mechanism of quantifying cost of delay. You can say that, okay, we have an agreement. We as a group agreed that what all factors get contributed to identify cost of delay, and we define cost of delay as what we are losing by not doing it every day, maybe some quantification of it, maybe a dollar quantification or relative quantification. And based on that, and plus based on the size of our value, our work item, we decide. And there could be some elements which goes as an escalation, which not get evaluated like this. So for example, there are some defects, or there are some type A defect or type B defect. There is some capacity, they anyway go there, so there is always a reserved capacity for such kind of things, where there is no decision happening, they just go in the process and gets done. But for the other areas, there are some rules. So you may also focus on classifying the work items differently and having different rules for different items.
Understood. So since here we see the lot of collaboration is around with stakeholders. So when you start working on it, so how do you segment your stakeholders, and what steps one has to take carefully to ensure you maintain a great or healthy relationship with the stakeholders, so that you are not in trouble like this always. So how should you be the first step to segment your stakeholders?
I believe this is going to be very tricky and really the key for success, as well as difficult to answer question. That the whole thing, it is the key which drives rest of the thing, in my belief, in my understanding, irrespective of life cycle. You use agile, you use not use agile, whatever it is. Because see, the whole idea here is the product or service which you are delivering or developing, it is meant for few people. And those people are the one who are critical stakeholders. And there could be multiple groups who are going to consume your product or service, and those groups should be heard. And sometimes they may have their own priorities and sometimes conflicting priorities as well. But ultimately, you don't do something for yourself. You are not creating a product to use yourself or your team. Yeah. So your team and you probably will never use that product, just in case. Like there could be some products you may also become a user to it. But in general, we can say that you are not the one who are going to use it. It's all for them. Yeah. Now that's the basic thing. And that's the importance of it, because it's all for them. So they should be here. Yeah. We should be listening to them, and we should have a very open communication with them. Now, at the same time, you may have a long list in a complicated organization, because there are so many departments and so many views, and that creates their own hassle. In a small organization, you may not have anyone giving you those input, but ultimately you lack those inputs. You don't have a right stakeholder coming to you. So how possibly I can do it? Various categorization can be used to remind you how possibly this product can be used. You may end up coming with your own questionnaire, which helps you in identifying who are the stakeholder. Depending upon the context, I use questions. So I may create my questions to identify the stakeholder. For example, some example question: who is going to use my product? Yeah. So do I have those stakeholders who represent or who are really going to use my product or services? That's the one thing. Who is going to sell my product? Yeah. So do I have a people, if my product is getting sold to something, like say I'm doing B2B product. So who are the people who are going to sell my product? Do I have a representation for them? Who are going to support my product? Yeah. So in future, what are the people, what kind of a set of things who probably will support my products or services? There could be other things, that who are the people who might be doing pricing decision or partnership decision. So who will define partner for my product? So it depends upon a product business model, how the product is expected to earn money at the end. And in order to earn that money, what kind of channels, what kind of end users, or from where the expected flow is going to come in. So that could be a one dimension. The another dimension could be a compliance dimension. So who all should be satisfied in order to make my product available to the market? So I have a customer willing to pay, but the government is not letting me to put my product on the market. So say compliance and legals and all aspects. So you may also need to see, okay, is there anyone who can stop me from delivering value to my customer? Yeah. And if yes, who are those people and what are their concerns? So it's a multidimensional thing. Depending upon the product or service, you need to consider, for example, e-commerce. So you may also need to consider of the people who are offering the product, the people who are going to consume the product, the people who are going to give a discount on the product, the people who are possibly bringing some kind of a payment gateways and other packages or loyalty programs for the product. Yeah, so all they are need to be considered because ultimately they are the one who create this product priority.
Understood. So it's like, so like, as we told, we work in an environment where the product is not just with one people. We might be having a multiple teams together. So wherever you are lying or you own the area in that proper product flow, you should know your people lying up, down, here, left and right, so that, you are aware when you want to do something, whom I need and who should be part of it if I'm doing it, or some action I do in my area, they will be getting impacted or something like that. So that sort of cadence has to be there, a visibility track, so that, a sort of, maybe you have a connect with them, maybe weekly once or bi-weekly once, so that, we are aware of what is happening around. Based upon that, if we tell them, they are able to give their inputs and everything is very clear to, or maybe you have some communication channels created where
Perfect.
You have a group.
Yeah.
So that sort of awareness is always there.
Yeah. And some communication channels are prescribed in the agile way of working. Say you have an iteration review or sprint review. So you anticipate some stakeholder. Now it could be easy to say all stakeholders should participate, but that may not happen. But you have need to identify who are the one probably will be invited and probably will really attend it. You may have some set of stakeholders or their representatives coming in. You may have some set of stakeholders identified who will participate in a backlog refinement meeting. So you understand, okay, what kind of a prioritization things might be happening. You may not be a very formal ceremony, but there could be some kind of a milestone reviews in between, maybe once in a month, once in a 2 months. So you can say, okay, you guys cannot come every iteration review. We may have a special review happening every month and there those people will come. That's another possibility. There could be some stakeholders who may only want to see the reports, compliance guys basically. So you may want to put some stakeholder just sending the report. So it's a kind of, if you talk with your project management experience, it's a stakeholder engagement plan. So you identify the list of stakeholder, you understand what are their concerns, you classify them, and then you create a communication plan for them, an engagement plan with them that, okay, these will be invited in a sprint reviews, these will be invited in backlog refinement. For them, I will be sending report. For these, I may be giving them ad hoc demos whenever they ask for. There could be some, I will create a video and share about the product progress with the help of a video. Probably they will respond there. So you come up with those kind of a possible engagement plans.
Absolutely. Recently, I'm doing something like this. So we are creating something which will be used by the another team. So I had a discussion with the PO. So we can have, even before the sprint is ending, we can have some sort of interim demo of what we have done, is so that you can have a look. And if you can visualize, this is what you're expecting, so that, when it's done, and if there is something of feedback which can come right away, we can, take into consideration right now, rather than, the actual sprint review and then reworking. So we can right away do it. So in a couple of days or something like that. So
perfect.
That sounds
Perfect.
Absolutely. So right now, when we were talking about the product and services, so I have, you can say in total, I have 2 more questions around this area. So suppose like you are in an organization and now in this post-COVID era and these all things, your company have decided they want to focus on the growth of whatever XYZ product they have. So as a PO, how do you organize discovery around it? Like what would be your PO's role around that part?
So this part is a strategy role. So till now, what we were focusing on execution role. And what I see usually, the term called product owner, I'm not saying is it right or wrong. If I look into job description, if I look at the people who are doing this job, it's too much execution oriented. It's more about writing user stories, acceptance criteria, functional acceptance, non-functional acceptance, and backlog refinement, and getting things done. Yeah, that remains the focus area. Usually. But there is a possibility, and it depends upon your role, your experience. You may be still called product owner, where the strategy and discovery and part will also get added in your profile, maybe gradually, or you may work with someone who is doing that discovery. Yeah, rather than someone tell you this is the feature I want, you are the one who is expected to discover that feature. Yeah, so that could be an opportunity which one has to go to. And this is more, I would say, strategic thinking is needed. And you can start with first understanding what are the problems and opportunities which we are looking at. So we have a product. What are the problem in the current customer flow in the current product? Or what are the new opportunities which you want to exploit by way of extending the product? So a definition of problem or opportunity is a good thing. Now, you may also need to think of who has this problem, because problems are not necessarily universal. So you may have a customer segment, and some customer segment may have that problem. Some may not care about it. So you also need to be focusing on who should I care for more, which is a customer segmentation to start with. And then you may go into a persona space as well. You understand, okay, this is the type of people, this is the segment, because this segment is more profitable. You should have your own reasons, yeah, opportunity reasons or problem reasons. And we want to solve, or we want to make this set of customer happy, say retail customer or an enterprise customer or a partners. You have those kind of, or you may have a multiple, but you understand this type of problem you want to solve for this set of customer, this type of problem you want to set for this set of customer. So we create those kind of a problem statements possibly, and some segmentation information to start with. Now, once we are done with that, then we may start focusing on some typical personas, if that is relevant there, and try to see what kind of a detailed problem or an opportunity we see by working with those kind of a segment or persona. So see, I did an analysis, I understood the enterprise customer is facing this problem, then I understood the enterprise customer persona is like this, and these are the type of problem they are facing. And if I solve this problem, this is how possibly they will impact my revenue or the growth or something. So you come to some kind of a business case, yeah, at a lightweight, height weight, you figure it out, and especially at least for a business case for selecting a particular segment or selecting a particular problem, because there are 100 problems, not each problem requires fixing, yeah, and they may not be profitable for you as a company to fix all those problems. So you want to identify which problem has to be fixed. And once that is done, then the rest of the conversation will start. So rest of the conversation could be market research, could be observation of the customer, how they are taking care of their current need right now. So even if I have a problem, but somehow I must be managing. So how I am managing it? Yeah, so I might want to understand that. Or I may want to do an interview of those set of customers to understand probably how do I move forward. And once that hypothesis is done, or that understanding is done, or you create an hypothesis that these are the things people might face. So you have a problem hypothesis that, okay, I believe this is the problem, and I believe if I solve this problem, this will help me in achieving the result. Then you reach to a particular feature which helps you in checking that hypothesis or validating that hypothesis by way of creating something, putting into the business, and then probably learning it back based on the data. Sometimes the problem study, if you are just say you have a website and you have a conversion rate as a problem, just as an example. So you may want to do a data analysis of various visitors and all also to understand the problem and may come with a hypothesis that if we change the flow in this particular way, it might produce a feature. So understanding, somehow we need to identify how do we focus on discovery of a problem. Yeah, and once we discover that problem, then we focus on how we discover the tentative solution. I'm using our tentative solution because I need to validate that. So I need to have a process for validating the problem also, that am I really getting the right problem? Because I might be shooting the wrong target. And then I also iterate to see, am I really solving the problem in a right way? So am I having a right problem or am I solving it in the right way? Both has to be learned. And by doing this iterative learning, I probably will have a more profitable product.
Great. It really makes sense. So like if I see, as you told, so we as a product owner are primarily towards, tactical area where execution. So this is somewhere, where the organizations where do not have a, clear demarcation between product manager and owner. So somewhere product owners get, dragged here also. So, but I believe maybe like as a product owner, so here, if I have a product manager, so maybe we can, again, as the all basic skills, like basic areas like facilitation, bring everyone together and figure it out the gaps, like to as is and to be product, what they are thinking, what problems they have observed. And when everybody is on the key page, like everything is done, then you work with your team, iteratively to deliver something and get it reviewed. The whole point over here is like, be on the same page, start building and getting a feedback, continuous feedback, to ensure like what we are doing, is it really doing it right or the right things, and so that we are on the way of doing something. But if as a product owner, if I have a product manager here, I will be working more closely with my product manager to get like how we are driving, how we're taking forward, and just ensuring what they need from our end is there to help and take it forward.
So even if you have people, and again, it's a team game, it's not necessarily a one person doing it, and it depends upon the complexity of the organization also. It could be a brainstorming session which results into a problem statement. In some cases, you are the only one who's doing data analysis, because some kind of problems can be discovered by doing data analysis also. So multiple technique depending upon the context. And yes, you may work with the product manager in case that person is also responsible for discovery and strategy part of it and coming up with the top level ideas. So even you work with them, you have a better understanding of why we are doing it, which helps you in resolving the stakeholder alignment issue at a later stage. So whenever people are saying, this is something I need today, this is something I need tomorrow, when you have an understanding of the big picture, when you understand what problem we are trying to solve, when you understand which customer segment we are trying to focus on, you might be able to facilitate those prioritization conversation better. Somebody might be asking a particular thing, but you ask that, okay, will our target customer, this persona, will ever use it? And somebody will say, no, this is not useful for that guy. So why are we talking about it? We have another functionality which is critically needed by that persona. So better we talk about that. So having this big picture understanding makes me more effective in asking questions and facilitating those prioritization conversation even at my team level, because I can remind stakeholders, because stakeholders are busy in multiple things and they have their focused view. When they start thinking about their requirement, they don't care about others' requirement. So they need to be reminded. They need to be reminded about big picture. But if I also don't remember the big picture, then it may take more time and more iteration before we can have an agreement on the priorities.
Absolutely. I totally can relate and imagine and think like, yes, exactly. This is how things should work. Sometimes we miss in because, as you told, there are some stakeholders, C-level executives, they just need it. Maybe they don't know whether it's valuable or this. And as I was in a similar situation doing something, so there I get into it. I told them something is already happening. Why don't you use that? Why you want something new? How different it will be? So I think after that, nobody reached out to me because they knew, oh, it's already there.
Yeah. And that's an interesting point. And I usually see, even when I see a product owner's profile and the requirements, the feedback matrices are not much discussed. I'm not sure, not many, or because see, usually the product owners' profiles are tactical roles, so maybe that's why they are not coming. But many of these things can also be resolved when we have a feedback matrices. So a kind of matrix which talks about what value we delivered this iteration, which feature has come, had a real hypothesis really getting validated, where the hypothesis got failed. So we get a feedback for next prioritization. So many times our whole process remains is we getting priority. We may do a facilitated discussion. There is a brainstorming and we move, but there is no mechanism to see the iteration, the previous delivery which has been made and how customer responded to it. And that helped us in learning something, and that is creating the overall outcome performance of the team. So we are unable to have an outcome matrix many times collected, discussed on a frequent basis. That also results many of these prioritization problems.
Absolutely. I see those happenings because, the way we see that the sprint, current sprint, upcoming sprint should be based upon that. But sometimes, I would be honest, it never happens because you are in a delivery mode. You just have to deliver it, and you create an output. You don't know what it will be consumed, when the other team will be able to use it. You just create it and keep it, but you done it, but you are not delivered. You just delivered output, but not outcome.
Yeah.
Those things happen. Yeah.
And if we have some mechanism, to make it visual, make it get reviewed on a periodic basis with the help of stakeholder, then it can also improve prioritization process and ad hoc decision making. Because whenever the ad hoc decision is made and someone pushed the priority, you know that that thing has resulted into a loss in the outcome for a X duration. And that can help us in probably talking well or giving some quantitative data in the next conversation. So that's a product owner can also initiate some kind of exploration that, okay, what possible outcome metrics I can come up with, which can probably help me in having more efficient conversation with the senior stakeholder, where I'm not using my judgment. I'm just saying, oh, last iteration, we could not deliver this much value because we got into some ad hoc stuff. Hopefully we should be able to catch up next time. So something like that.
Absolutely. Those things are ad hoc stuffs, they keep coming. So yes, it happens. And finally, when we do all these things, we do all the sprints and everything. So ultimately a thing comes, suppose like this team had just started working on the Scrum. So as a PO, what measurements you will use to understand whether the value is delivered or not, rather everything is done? Because I can create something, but if nobody is using, even if I have created, it's no use. So how you ensure that what is being delivered, it creates value and you are on the right track? So how can you keep also team motivated on those lines, guys? We are on the right track, and if we are deviated, how to ensure everything is going in the right track? Yeah.
So again, that's the same thing which is related with our previous question. And we were saying that we should have some feedback matrices. We should have some outcome matrices. Yeah. We should have some outcome matrices. Now, this also depend upon the overall feedback cycle. So say one feedback could be the stakeholder feeling about my demonstration. So that's a possible thing. You can say we gave a demonstration and people marked us good, bad, average, or some mechanism at the end of an iteration, we take a survey. And that makes some number which helps us in saying, okay, how people were feeling about our demo last time. That's the one possible thing. But the problem here is it's still a judgment. If you have a little feedback loop which goes till customer. So say if you have a mechanism, maybe monthly or every 2 weeks, if your increments are also reaching to end customer, they are becoming deployed, then you have a better a mechanism of validating your hypothesis and checking how the things are working out. So say in a simple way that, okay, you gave a feature to do something in a different way. So there is one way of checkout, you give a second type of checkout. You can monitor how many times that second type of checkout was used. That could be one possible thing. So people are using it. There's a usage of your feature itself is a metrics, because many times feature get created but hardly get used. So you may have a hypothesis how many percentage of customers are expected to use it, and then you notice how many percentage of customers are really using it by doing some analytical data understanding. So that can be a very good feedback for everyone, not only for the team. There could be other feedbacks, like you had a hypothesis of selling more, reducing some conversion rate. So you can say that if you do this, customers should be able to finish their checkout process in less time, or there will be more people buying this particular thing, seeing that other things are also available. So you have a hypothesis and you check that, okay, were we able to reduce the customer pain? If yes, by how much percentage? If no, where are we missing? Yeah. So depending upon what kind of my reach is, my feedback loop is, at some point in time, I definitely want to go to an end customer feedback loop, the one which I am talking about. And we can start getting a feedback that, okay,